I wonder if any of you have ever had a place in your life that was like Betty's Diner. Maybe it was a place like Cheers where everybody knew your name. Or maybe it's your AA group or choir practice. Maybe it's the laundromat that you used in your 20s. For me, there was this laundromat where there were regulars and there were folks who were homeless who came in to be in this steamy, warm environment, and we all communed. It was so warm and lovely and cozy. And maybe it's this church. And I pray for you that it's this church and that it's this community where you could tumble in whatever is working or not working, whatever kind of help you need or mess you are in, and that you'd be fully welcomed. Maybe that happens already. If so, I am so glad that that is the case. And I pray for those who are still in need of a Betty's Diner or a congregation like this one, where they might fill their cup with something kind. Before I became a parish minister, I served as a hospital chaplain, and I loved my job, and being among the people was the most humbling experience I've ever known. But oh boy, did I feel useless much of the time. Of course, I couldn't snap my fingers and heal anybody's illness. That isn't the point of chaplaincy anyway. But I also couldn't bring the sacrament of the sick like the Catholic priests did. My Jewish and Muslim colleagues had countless memorized prayers, and I could have sung Spirit of Life and, a few other memorized poems, perhaps, but I didn't grow up with a long list of Hail Marys or other things like that. I had to rote learn some of those, which I did. That was very hard. I'm not a good memorizer. But I could sing Spirit of Life, and I did that a few times over. But mostly, I found myself walking into rooms empty-handed, hoping against hope that it was really true that my presence or kindness would be enough. In operating rooms, in waiting rooms, in rooms where someone lay dying, there were countless moments when I just could not fix anything at all of what was broken. And yet, the hospital became for me a place of hope, not unlike Betty's Diner. It's the place that I realized that I didn't need to know the answers for sure. I didn't have to have any special tools, but I also didn't even need to know everybody in this gathered community of 730 beds at Brigham and Women's. It wasn't that I even could see the same people gathered each day. Sometimes I met someone once and that was it. But it was so life-changing to be a part of a beloved community. And what I learned there was that in beloved community, there is an ethos of respect. That's its most salient feature, I would say. An ethos of respect and an understanding of our interconnectedness, even among strangers. And in that kind of environment, one can always opt in to add to the collective good. Doctors and nurses and kitchen staff and clerks and visitors and patients, we were all orbiting one another, trying to bind up the broken and catch those who were falling. Because in truth, none of us really have it all together, and everyone is just a little bit lost sometimes. Some of us have not too much certainty to hold on to, not much functionality in one way or another. We are all mortal with a time limit. We all are longing for more happiness than we care to admit. And most of us feel alone sometimes. And yet we are constantly invited back in and lured back in sometimes by the cosmic alignment of relationship and need. Our lives are entwined. We need others, and others need us. So this lesson about beloved community came along over and over during the years I was there, but especially one night in an almost laughable way. I think I was somewhat the butt of the universe's joke, so I'll tell you the story of this one night that really changed me, because I thought, I'm just a tiny part of all of us being more deeply connected than we can ever tell. I was on an overnight shift, and though being awake all night can make anyone delirious, I want to assure you that I am not enhancing this tale. The things that happened really happened. I was a part of it, but like I said, this story is not really about me. It's about the bizarre but beloved community of which we are all already a part. I was doing rounds after dinner. Early in the evening, I visited a man who had come in for a cardiology appointment, only to find that he would need to stay for surgery. He was distraught and anxious about his health, understandably, but even more, worried about the car that he had parked quite far away. I don't have family, he said, and I don't want it to be towed. I left it at CVS, over there in a parking lot that they don't charge me, but I used it because the parking lot is free, and I thought I would be back there in an hour or two, but I can't get back there. And I called them, and it's still there, but they say, we will tow it tomorrow, and I can't get to it because now I have to stay. Is there any way, chaplain, that you could get to it and drive it over to the hospital garage? And he didn't know that I was scheduled to be there throughout the night. So he said, maybe after you get off work? And he was really hopeful, and I hesitated, and I said, I don't know, but okay, I will try. He looked down. He was thinking that I was trying to say no, and that really I just would say no. And he said, I can't give you that much in return. I don't really have anything much, but there's a bunch of random stuff in the car, and you can take anything you see. What kind of random stuff? But all right. But the sad thing was that he thought that he would have to barter to get help. And that just wasn't sitting right with me. When you really need help, it should be okay that you just ask for the help that you need. And so I put his keys in my jacket pocket. Later, I spent time with a woman who had requested a chaplaincy visit, and that meant that she knew kind of what she was looking for. It always made my job a little easier if someone knew they wanted companionship. She told me about how her bone marrow transplant had been going and how she had been in the hospital for a number of weeks. What hurt most, she said, wasn't the pain in her bones. It was that her son wouldn't come and see her. And as we talked, the room grew dark, and the stars outside seemed to shine just for her. And when I rose to leave, she said quietly, "You have parents?" And I nodded, and she said, "They love you." And there was so much pain in her eyes. Of all my lifelong doubts and insecurities, that one had never been on my own personal list. How naive and lucky I am to have never wondered if my parents loved me. We looked at one another, blinking tears, and slowly she smiled and she ran a tired hand over her cheek and seemed to like, and she said, "You know what I could use? Some chocolate." And I didn't have any chocolate, but she added, or a hug. And so we hugged. On my final visit, I met a woman with casts on both legs, and she told me about her children and the presents she dreamed of giving them for the holidays. They were, 8 and 10 or something like that. And she wanted to give them new scooters and rollerblades. We live in a crowded place in the city. I just want to get them outside so they can be in nature. And suddenly I recalled that although I live at that time somewhat in the city, I rode my bike into work that morning past a beautiful frozen pond with geese in it. And I had been rushing, and I hardly noticed those beautiful geese. They would love those skates, but I don't think I can actually afford to get them. Anyways, a girl can dream. And I thought about those geese, so free, no need of money, floating on the pond, wild, nature, outdoors, how much I wanted her kids to be able to get outdoors and enjoy those moments of outdoor time, skates or just being in nature. But I didn't have anything much more I could say, and we said goodnight. By 9 o'clock, my rounds were done. I would stay on call through the night, but I thought if I timed it right, I could get a lift to the man's car at that CVS and drive it really fast to the underground garage and be back within, 20 minutes? It wasn't really allowed. You're supposed to, keep your pager and stay on duty in the hospital, but 20 minutes. I think I can make it. My parents lived nearby at the time, and this was before Uber was like a really fast and easy thing, so I called them. And they thought my reason was sort of iffy, but they said yes. My parents, I was reminded, say yes when I need them. And I thought, let me remember, this is one of those pay it forward moments. Okay, let me say yes the next time someone needs something from me. But just then, a code blue sounded on my pager, and I hurried to the cardiac cath lab. The team tried everything, chest compressions, a defibrillator, and nothing was working. And then something I would not have believed if I had not seen it myself. The doctor made a small incision where the previous heart surgery had been sutured up and reached inside to massage the heart with his hands. Like that. Life, sensing this final gift, revved back into gear, and the heart monitor began its steady beep once more, and all of us took a collective breath. It was truly amazing. And then we stood there sort of like, whoa, and a nurse pushed out past me into the hall. "Move," he said. "I got to get to X-ray." And I looked at him funny, and he said, "I just swallowed one of those chest staples that popped off." Oh, like, oh, so good. What on earth? The nurse beside him said, "Swallowed or inhaled?" "Swallowed," he said grimly. Ugh. I began to feel woozy. My own grip on consciousness never seemed so elusive, and I crawled off into the utility elevator a little bit down the hall, and I lay down so as not to faint. "You good?" An orderly loomed over me. No, I was not good. "Well, here's some water," he said, and it tasted like kindness. When my parents did pull up outside after the little delay, the air was crisp and beautiful. I gulped it in, and the stars shone, and my parents told me about their day on the way to CVS. And it was so normal and boring. And I loved them so much I couldn't speak. Only one car remained in the lot, the Mazda the man had described. As I fumbled with the lock, the keys slipped from my freezing fingers into a slushy puddle. Bending down, I kid you not, there in the slush were 3 $20 bills. See, if I made it up, I would have just said one. It would have seemed more like normal, but there were 3, there really were, and I wiped them off and I put them in my pocket. And I opened the car and went in, and then right there on the front seat, amid a lot of random stuff in this car, but there on the front seat was a large packet of Hershey Kisses. Chocolate, I thought. And I had to laugh. Having had my eyes opened all night to the gifts, I had forgotten that I was holding the natural world and the chance to bike and the hug that my arms could still do and all these things. I knew without a doubt that I had now become a messenger bestowing gifts myself. Some cosmic realignment was about to happen. All life is a circle, the stars seem to say. I drove the car, said goodbye to my parents, and I thanked them, and I drove the car to the hospital garage, and I parked it, and I wrote down where it is so the poor guy could find it later, and I went to find the man who had entrusted me with his keys. His room was empty. The computer listed him as being in the ICU. When I arrived there, the nurse took the keys from me. He coded about an hour ago while we were moving him to the cath lab, she said. But the doctor started his heart up with his hands, and he is lucky to be alive. Well, that doesn't happen that often, and so I realized that I had been at that code, but I hadn't realized that it was one and the same patient. Good grief. One moment that poor guy had car trouble, and the next, well, life is a gift, and let us never forget it. As you can probably imagine, the $60 from the puddle went to the woman who needed money for her children's skates. And the chocolate went to the woman who had asked for chocolate. And both of them couldn't quite believe my story of how their gifts had come to them, but they both sat there grinning anyway. And the man whose car I had managed to move spent many weeks in the hospital. But I saw him off and on through those days, and when I saw him again awake, he too lifted his frail arms up for a hug. Let us never be deceived by who is giving and who is receiving. Not one of us asks to be here on this moving, spinning water planet. None of us fully understands the mystery of how or why we arrived, or the wonder of far-off stars or nearby faces. Life was simply laid before us when we opened our eyes as babies. It is a gift, a grace, freely given, some of it beautiful, some of it painful, none of it earned or deserved. In hospital halls, at late-night diner counters, at protests and vigils, in shared meals and hugs, the intersections of our messy lives. This is the life we did not make, yet are entrusted to live. When we pause and widen the welcome and share our stories and our presence with one another and redistribute the real wealth of the universe, then something ordinary becomes extraordinary. We are all graced simply by being here. Life, its beauty, its pain, its mystery is a gift. A sunset, a death, a poem, a reconciliation, bad news from a doctor, each is part of this grace. Noticing these moments and sharing them with others is really how grace is revealed. Every human life is valuable in itself and in relationship to others. Our worth does not need to be earned or borrowed or redeemed. We are free to live, to do what good we can, and to accept ourselves in peace. This is the only grace I know, amazing, unexpected, and free, a gift renewed with each new day. Love enough for all. May it be so, and amen.